Matt's Madness, Season 3, Episode 6. We're back. It's been a while, but we are here, and we're during the college basketball season. Season got going just a little bit over a week ago, and so far it has been great. And because we're in November, it means that Feast Week is coming up, and actually today is when the bulk of tournaments start. We got the Charleston Classic. We've got a few more that get going on this Thursday. Again, Matt Mlodzinski here with Ariel Puterman. First off, got to ask you this. College basketball, we had the Champions Classic just a few days ago. Kansas with the win over Kentucky. I know you got to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this season so far has been great. We've had a lot of great games so far. On the first night, we saw a crazy upset with James Madison beating Michigan State on the road, and certainly not going to be the last upset. So it's been great. Champions Classic delivered. Both games were really exciting. We saw that Kansas game at the end. So really great start to the season. It's only going to get better this upcoming week with all the tournament games going on.
100%. And obviously, some teams have already picked up big wins. Other teams, we're not really sure if they're good or not. And, preseason projections, you name it, it's fun to put together, but you really don't get a feel for a lot of these teams yet. But you kind of can with Feast Week. It gives you an opportunity to see which teams are legit, which teams aren't. And that's what we're going to start off with right here. What teams need to prove themselves during Feast Week? Ariel and I both have 3 teams that we have on our list. So give me your first. What's one team that you think needs to prove themselves during Feast Week?
Yeah, first one for me is Kansas State. And Matt, you kind of talked about them on our other show, just kind of how they've been struggling a little bit. They look bad against USC. USC crushed them. And then Bellarmine, a team that they should have won pretty easily, they actually got outscored in the second half and won by just 8. Kaluma hasn't looked great at all. Tyler Perry's been fine, and Cam Carter's looked great, actually. He's been great stepping up. But 2 games that were really concerning. They looked a lot better in their last game, but now they have the Baja Mar coming up, which we'll talk about later. But 3 teams in that tournament, besides K-State, that are either equal or better than them. So this will be a great way for them to prove themselves. If they can't win those games, though, then we'll have a much better indication on how good they can be this year.
Well, it's funny that you bring Kansas State up because they were one of my teams, so I'm going to pivot a little bit here. I don't want to go with the same team, and there's a lot of teams that need to prove themselves. So another team that I'm going to bring up is Washington in the Continental Tire main event. Really, all 4 teams in this tournament have to prove themselves. St. Mary's already losing a game that they shouldn't have lost. San Diego State, you could kind of say the same against a BYU team that we weren't really sure how they would be this year, transitioning to the Big 12, and both of those teams with the 1 loss already. Xavier, a team that we really don't know about either because of all the injuries. Zach Fremantle, Jerome Hunter. But the team that I want to talk about in that tournament is Washington, because the Huskies brought in so many transfers. They've got a point guard in Severe Wheeler, already, by the way, in the top 250 all time, actually inside the top 200 all time in assists in college basketball history. Someone who is one of the best distributors in the history of the game, honestly, if you want to get down to it. He's going to end his career in the top 100 all time in assists. And a lot of talent around him. Keon Brooks, someone who is athletic, can really score a lot of points. But Washington hasn't looked great so far. Also already losing a game. And for me, they were a team that I thought could make some noise in a deep Pac-12, but we haven't really seen it so far. I want to see if Mike Hopkins can really get something out of this team, because he's a coach who honestly is kind of becoming on the hot seat. He's had his time to start recruiting and bringing players in, and it hasn't really paid off yet at Washington. Obviously, he goes over there from Syracuse. COVID hits kind of during a time where as him as a coach, he's kind of trying to get players there. And I know that's kind of difficult, but it's kind of about time to see what Hopkins can do. And I think this tournament is a perfect time for him to do that.
Yeah, that's a good pick right there. I'm going to go with, I think a lot of people are thinking this, but FAU. I actually don't think this. I think they don't have anything to prove. They proved it all last year. But I think a lot of people still kind of see them as a fluky team. What if Memphis doesn't get that call at the end of the game? What if they lose that? How are we talking about them the same way? Fair enough. But they didn't. They got that call. They made it to the Final Four. So far they've looked fine. They beat Loyola Chicago pretty easily in the Barstool Invitational. One thing to note, though, is John L. Davis and Elijah Martin have really struggled this season. I know Elijah Martin had a big injury. He's kind of easing his way back, but those were the two guys they expected to be the best and to perform at the highest level. And luckily, FAU has had really not great competition, so they haven't had to really deal with the consequences of those poor performances. But they're heading into that ESPN Events Invitational, and they'll play Butler in the first round. Not a great team, but definitely a step up from what they've been playing so far. And then they have potential games against Penn State, Texas A&M, and Iowa State, all really good teams. So I think that if they can win that tournament easily, then they can prove they're a top 10 team and they deserve to be that top 10 team. But if they struggle a little bit, then they'll definitely raise some red flags.
Yeah, I mean, I think for my point is I do think they need to prove themselves. I know that you mentioned, though, that you don't think they need to. I will disagree there. I think that FAU, I think any team that's a mid-major that pulls off a run like they did in March, you're going to have questions because that was only one little spurt from last year. So I guess my question to you is, do you really think that FAU did prove it in that spurt? Because if that's the case, you could say that St. Peter's proved it when they made on their run, or Fairleigh Dickinson proved it when they knocked off Purdue. Like, do you really think that a March Madness Cinderella run is enough?
Yeah, here's the difference between FDU and FAU. FDU didn't deserve to be in there. They didn't win their conference tournament. They were a couple games above 500. FAU went 31-3 last year in a really good CUSA. This isn't some low mid-major. This is a CUSA that had the final teams in the NIT, North Texas and UAB. And then they had a lot of talent as well. So it's not like they were just some lucky March Madness conference tournament run. They snuck their way in, and then they just had a little bit of luck in the tournament. This team was one of the best mid-major, actually the best mid-major team throughout the whole season. Then they showed in the NCAA tournament how good they are. Now they bring back most of their team, especially their starters, with Martin and John L. Davis, like I mentioned before, and then Vlad Golden, who's looked phenomenal this season, Nick Boyd as well. So they absolutely have nothing to prove. They're just kind of reasserting what we all believed last year.
Yeah, I'll give it to you there. I mean, and obviously we see what the CUSA is capable of this year already with James Madison. I do got the right conference there, right? James Madison is in Conference USA. Are they in the Sun Belt? Okay, whatever.
And
same difference. Sun Belt, CUSA.
Yeah, FAU's in the American now.
Gotcha. And they're in the American. But either way, we're all talking about high-level college basketball conferences, and no one can disagree with that. Those are three of the best conferences in college basketball outside of the Power Six. So, I'll give it to you there. FAU clearly did prove enough, but, I think mid-major teams, one run isn't enough. And we've seen it before. VCU, they made a run, and then they kind of turned into a program for a while. They've been struggling lately, but it is certainly possible. My next team is Northwestern, a team that's 3-0. But they're 3-0, and they've kind of escaped 3 games, and 2 of them haven't necessarily been against good teams. One of them was to Dayton. I don't know what this Dayton team is made of this year, but certainly a respectable A10 team. Northwestern wins by 5. Their other 2 wins were by 4 over Western Michigan and only by 11 to a Binghamton team that it was a single-digit game in the second half against Binghamton. And even then, an 11-point win is nothing to, brag home about against a team like Binghamton. I'm just wondering if Northwestern, I'm not saying they were a fluke last year. They've been a good team. Boo Booey's a great player. But is Northwestern really going to get over the hump? I know they're not the same team as last year. Boo Booey might be back, but Chase Audiage is not back. So it's a team that's kind of looking for a second option again. And I'm wondering if Brooks Barnheiser can be that guy because I'm not sure, is Ryan Langborg going to be that guy? I don't know. I mean, there's multiple key players on this team, but just because you're a key player doesn't mean you're going to be someone who is as good as Chase Audience was last year for the Wildcats. So I'm interested to see what Northwestern can put together. They're playing in the Hall of Fame tip-off. They've got Rhode Island in the first game, so you're still not going to be able to judge much after that. But if they do play Mississippi State, who plays Washington State in the first round, I think a game against Mississippi State could give us a pretty good indication of what Northwestern is capable of. And we'll have one of our guys, Chandler Boucher, there for this the first round of this tournament. He won't be there for the championship, so he'll be able to give an in-depth look in that tournament at Mohegan Sun.
Yeah, and with Michigan State off to their rough start, the Big 12, Big 10, it looks like it's Purdue and everyone else. So Northwestern, if they look the part, then they can easily jump up to that top 3, 4 seed in the Big 12. But sorry, Big 10 again. But yeah, if they do struggle in that, then there's all those middle of the pack teams like Michigan State, like Illinois, Ohio State, Wisconsin, all those who can easily pass them and kind of kick Northwestern out of the Big 10 and out of tournament considerations.
Yeah, clearly you and I, conference realignment is getting to us.
Yeah, jeez.
What's your last team?
Yeah, my last team, I was going to say Michigan State, but everyone's talking about Michigan State, so I'm actually going to go to UNC. One of the most talked about teams in the offseason after what we saw last year from them going from preseason number 1 to missing the tournament. They get rid of Caleb Lowe, but they bring back RJ Davis and Baycott, and they look fine so far. They haven't exactly played the best teams. They beat Radford pretty easily. But now they're going to play in the battle for Atlantis, and there's a couple of good teams in there. You got Arkansas, Memphis, Michigan, Stanford, if you want to consider them good, and then Texas Tech and Nova. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but yeah, there's a lot of really good teams in there, and it'll be interesting to see how they perform just with the level of talent, especially if people are considering them one of the top teams in the ACC and one of the top teams in the country. So I think they have a lot to prove still after what we saw last year, and this will be a good way for them to prove that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's a team that that does need to prove things. They clearly didn't prove it last year. My final team is St. John's playing in the Charleston Classic, which does start today. St. John's, a team that everyone has kind of been talking about. Rick Pitino this, Rick Pitino that. All the great mid-major transfers they brought in. We haven't really seen it pay off. We really haven't seen it from St. John's yet. And I think that Michigan game was a good indication. An underrated Michigan team that seems to be doing just fine post Hunter Dickinson, who also seems to be doing just fine in Kansas. So maybe a win-win there with all of that. Phil Martelli obviously coaching that Michigan team, and I think that was a big difference. If Juwan Howard's on the sidelines, I'm not sure if Michigan wins by that much. I think that Phil Martelli is arguably a better basketball mind for coaching at this point than Juwan Howard. I think we just need to see it from Howard. He's a great recruiter. We haven't seen it with Michigan. I'm getting off topic, though. St. John's is the team I want to talk about. And Rick Pitino, clearly we know what he's capable of, but I don't know if it's happening yet. And I think he has a great chance to show us in the Charleston Classic. I know you're probably going to get on me for this because the teams in the Charleston Classic aren't necessarily teams that you can prove yourself against. Dayton, Wake Forest, LSU, I don't know. If they play Houston, then we'll know. I don't think we can grade everything off of one game against Michigan, a game where it was arguably too hyped up. You can get too hyped up for a game. I think that Michigan game was a prisoner of the moment for that for St. John's. Let's see how they do in the Charleston Classic.
Yeah, going back to that Michigan game, do you think that game was more of a St. John's didn't look good or Michigan looked really good? I know you can have both, but what was the bigger takeaway from that game for you?
I do think that it was that Michigan looked that good. I do think so. I mean, I think Michigan, kind of like this topic we're talking about, is a team that needs to prove themselves. What do they got this year? And against UNC Asheville, for those who follow college basketball in depth like we do, and Drew Pember got in foul trouble early on, so there's that. But Michigan looked pretty good against a quality mid-major team. And against St. John's, a team that people are high on and certainly have talent, Michigan looked dominant against. So it said more about them because St. John's is a team that has so many new pieces that they need to gel. And they're a team that we really won't fully know until January, maybe even February. But you can still learn more about them in a tournament that has 8 teams. They're going to play 3 games. You're gonna know a lot about St. John's coming up. So with that, we move on to some picks. We're going to go rapid fire really here. Pick a lot of the best tournaments during Feast Week. And we're going to start off with the best one, the Maui Invitational. Who wins it, Ariel?
Yeah, I know you said fire off, but I kind of want to talk about how all these teams really have already proven themselves. Tennessee, first team, they beat Wisconsin. We saw Syracuse come back from down 20 against Colgate, which, that's a game they should have won, but they proved that they can come back from a big lead and win a game, especially at home. We saw Purdue beat Xavier. We saw Gonzaga beat Yale, who's a really, really good Ivy League team, pretty easily. Kansas against Kentucky. Then Marquette going on the road to Illinois and beating them there. So, I mean, when we're talking about which teams have things to prove, these are like the handful of teams have nothing to prove so far. So that just makes this even better. But I mentioned all the teams. I think the finals can be Kansas, Purdue, if that is possible. But if it is, that's what I think. Oh, man, I think Purdue is going to win this one. I think Edie's great. I think Dickinson's great. I think Edie will get Dickinson to foul trouble. That'll be just enough to give Purdue the victory. But I will be rooting for Kansas, so I want to make that clear.
Okay, I'm going to divert while we have the time. You said that Syracuse should win the game against Colgate. Everyone knows I'm a Syracuse guy. I just had this argument with my friends. They said the same thing. That's a game Syracuse should win. I said, no, hold on. Colgate's a good team. They said, Colgate's not a good team. Colgate's a team that you should beat. Do you think that Colgate is a good team?
I think Colgate's a great team, but Syracuse is the better team. And they're at home. So they should have won that game. And they did. Okay. So good for them for winning. Good for them for showing they can make that kind of comeback against a good team, a good offensive-minded team as well. So
okay.
Yeah.
Another quick question then. Like this is all coming to me. And I'm allowed to do this because I'm the host, so whatever. But it is an argument that I have had. And I need to know where you stand on this. In my mind, there are over 300 teams in college basketball. I will go out on a limb and say that 100 to 125 teams are good teams, quality basketball teams. I think there are elite teams. I think there are great teams. But if you were to lose to number 125 in KenPom, odds are that's a mid-major team with over 20 wins. That's a good team. Do you agree with that, or do you think that it's a thinner line?
I think it depends on the year. Sometimes we see more than 125. Sometimes we see much less. Right now, it's looking like that, especially with the new portal era and the extra COVID years. There's a lot more good teams than we've ever seen before, and that should make for a great Selection Sunday, great bubble, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's no problem with that. It's more also situation. Are you on the road? Are you winning against them on the road? Are you winning against them at home, neutral, injuries, all that kind of stuff as well.
Interesting perspective. I think we'll have to save this and maybe turn it into another Matt's Madness episode in depth later on. I'll get back to it real quick though. My Maui winner, also Purdue. Zach Edey going to be too tough to handle. But again, if Zach Edey and Dickinson play in this Maui, that would be a sight to see. That would be must-watch basketball. Talk about trying to get people interested in the game. That's the type of matchup you want to get, because most people that don't follow the game of college basketball as in-depth still know who Zach Edey is. They still know who Hunter Dickinson is. That would draw them into the game, and something tells me that it would deliver. It'd be a close game. Purdue wins the Maui for me. How about the Baja Mar?
Yeah, so Baja Mar, we got 4 teams in that one: Miami, Georgia, Kansas State, Providence. We talked about Kansas State earlier. They'll play Providence in the first round. Miami will play Georgia. I think it's going to be Miami, Kansas State, and I think Miami's going to win that one.
Yeah, I agree with Miami. I think that especially when you look at what Kansas State has, can they get Arthur Kaluma going? Well, guess what? He will have to go up against Bryce Hopkins. I think you're going to have a really hard-fought battle between K-State and Providence, whereas I think Miami can just roll over Georgia. And because of that, they'd have a lighter win. And again, Georgia could still make it close. It's not going to be a 30-point blowout, but I think Kansas State, Providence will be physical. Miami will just outshoot Georgia. And because of that, they'll be more well-rested. They'll be able to take care of business against whoever they play in the championship. Coming up next, another 4-team event between the Continental Tire main event.
Yeah, so great all-around matchup, really. So we got a couple of the talented mid-majors, St. Mary's and SDSU, and we have Washington, who you talked about earlier, and Xavier. This will be a good one. I think a lot of even-matched teams. I'm going to go St. Mary's, though. Mahaney's terrific. They lost to Weber State this past Sunday, which was a little bit of a surprise, but I think they'll bounce back. Randy Bennett's a terrific coach, and I think they have what it takes to win this one.
Yeah, another thing, I think that's a prime example. I mean, Weber State, a team that most people would say is bad, but they're a good team. Dylan Jones is literally, he was getting NBA looks last season. They're a good team. He's a good player. St. Mary's, though, I think they rebound from that loss, a game that, again, they probably shouldn't have lost that game. They did. I think St. Mary's will win this tournament. I'm not high on San Diego State. We're having the same picks here, but honestly, I mean, That's just who I think is going to win this tournament. We're probably going to have the same pick in this next one. Maybe we won't. It's the Empire Classic.
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna have to go with Louisville to win. No, I'm kidding. It's crazy because you got like UConn, who's like top 5 team in the country. You got Texas, who's like top 10, maybe even better, and then Indiana, who's like 25 to 30, and then you got UConn, which is like 200. So I don't know how they snuck their way into that tournament, but we all know who's not going to win that one. UConn, Texas, definitely the 2 best teams. If Dessou is playing, I think it's Texas. I don't think he's going to play though, so I'm going to go with UConn.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go here. I mean, Indiana, I think, is almost in the same boat as Louisville. Like they're not going to be too good this year at all. I do think that
being in the same boat is kind of crazy. Louisville's like a whole different tier than Indiana.
Really?
Louisville's like probably one of the worst Power 6 conferences. Not probably, is the worst Power 6 conference team.
You think so? Worse than DePaul?
What?
Worse than DePaul?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I do believe that. Indiana is nowhere near. Indiana could finish top 7 in the Big Ten.
6 over Florida Gulf Coast, 8 over Army. That's Indiana so far.
I think those are both decent teams. Now they got an interesting lineup. I think they'll take time, but Louisville is just terrible. Like I don't even think you can put them in like the same tier.
I'll be honest, Indiana.
Many teams in the same tier as Louisville.
Indiana has Wright State up next. Let's say they win that game, but then they go UConn, Harvard, Maryland, Michigan, Auburn, Kansas, and in that UConn game they would play potentially Louisville. If I'm looking at this next stretch of games, I think that Indiana honestly goes 3-0, 3-1, 4-1, 5-1. Maybe I think between it's that Michigan through Kansas stretch. I think they could literally be 5-5 going into the Moorhead State game. But maybe that's better than Louisville. Louisville could be 3-7.
Let's do a spread bet. I'll take Indiana, you take Louisville. If they end up playing each other in the Empire Classic, we'll put $10 on it. And we'll see what happens from there. But make this a little bit of a competition.
We'll see. I do think that Indiana's in the same boat as Louisville. I think they're that bad. But either way, they're not winning the Empire Classic. I think we can both agree on that. Kind of like you, we're going the same pick here. If Max Asmus can get hot, but again, I've told you before, I don't know if I trust him against Power 6 opponents. I want to see a Texas team that I want to see how they use him. It's only been a few games, so we're not totally sure what he's going to be like throughout the season. So I'll go with UConn. Fort Myers tip-off, Wisconsin, Virginia, West Virginia, SMU. Are we going to pick a different team here? What's going on?
I want to pick a different team, but I think we're both going to go Virginia here. West Virginia, like, if you want to put someone close to Louisville, West Virginia might be that team. They've looked terrible so far this season, especially without Kirk Reese for those first 9 games. SMU played Texas A&M a little bit competitively last game, but I think it really comes down to Wisconsin and Virginia, and Wisconsin did not look impressive at all against Providence, so I think Virginia's the outlier here, who did beat a good Florida team earlier last week.
Well, we are going to be different here, and I did pick Virginia earlier on. A couple months ago, I wrote an article about the Fort Myers tip-off. I thought that they were the team because of Tony Bennett. On Thursday, I'm going with Wisconsin. And the reason is because it's a Wisconsin team that played a close game already against Auburn and then got blown out by Providence. And I think the fact that they have their backs against the wall, they're a veteran team, they've already lost 2 games, they kind of know what's at stake. This is a group that knows what they need to do to make the NCAA tournament. Tons of experience on this Wisconsin team. Other teams in this tournament, not so much. We've already talked about West Virginia. SMU is a little bit of a sleeper. They've started out pretty good so far. But I think that it'll be Wisconsin and Virginia ultimately. And I think the experience and kind of like Wisconsin knowing like, hey, we've got to do something here. Like if we want to boost this resume and not start off horrendously, we need to go out here and win a couple games. And I think the Badgers get it done and win the Fort Myers tip-off. Up next, we've got an 18 tournament, a tournament that probably second only to the Maui. It's the Battle for Atlantis. Some great teams here.
Yeah, it's so hard to pick one team. Michigan's giving me this vibe where they just start the season soup. Do you remember 3-4 years ago, Michigan wasn't even in the top 25, and they just won like every game. They jumped up to number 4, and then they just crashed.
Yep.
They give me similar vibes this season. I think they're going to do exactly that. I think they're going to win this battle for Atlantis. Everyone's going to talk about how good they are. Doug McDaniel's going to be awesome. Nakama's going to be awesome. And then after this tournament, they'll kind of slow down a little bit. But they're hot right now. They're feeling themselves. They're playing well together. I think they pull this one out.
It's an interesting tournament because there's some great teams here with Final Four potential. I think Arkansas and North Carolina, and I was going to say Villanova, but I don't know after the Penn loss because that's a pretty bad, that's a bad loss. That's not a good loss. And I know that it's a rivalry. That's not a good loss. But I'm not high on Texas Tech at all. I had them in my bottom 10 Power 6 teams heading into this year. You probably will have something to say about that as the Big 12 guy, but I don't think that Texas Tech is good at all. Northern Iowa and Stanford, Jared Bynum, great player. Not really sure how I'm liking the Cardinal after their start to the season. With all that being said, I think it's between Arkansas and North Carolina. I'm going to go with North Carolina in this one. They were your team to prove. I think that you do prove it in the battle for Atlantis. The Tar Heels win this event. If this tournament was played later on, I think Arkansas would have a better shot. They're a Final Four team for me, but I want to let Arkansas grow as a team because there's so many new guys on that team. North Carolina knows that people are watching them. They know that people are doubting them, but they have the experience. And I think that you'll see that during Feast Week. Experience pays off in Feast Week almost more than it does in March Madness. I know that these tournaments don't matter like March Madness does, but if you have an experienced team, you're probably going to play well in the non-conference and win a tournament. So again, North Carolina is mine. Let's go to the NIT season tip-off, a tournament that used to be, I think it was a 16-team tournament back in the day when I was growing up. But now it's only 4, and it's Baylor, Oregon State, Florida, and Pitt.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Empire tournament where there's clearly one bad team, and that's Oregon State.
Yeah.
I kind of want to get cute here and go Pitt. They've just looked really good start the season. They've looked really good the last 2 seasons. I know Baylor would be the easy pick here, but I just don't love Baylor this year. I know they beat Auburn, but that's a game they should have lost if Auburn just didn't choke that one at the end and kind of lost their identity. I think, man, I hate to go Pitt here because I don't trust them, but I'll stand by it and I'll go with Pitt here.
Wow, I think that is a crazy pick. I'll be honest, I didn't like Baylor going into the season. I like Baylor a lot after watching Jacoby Walter. That dude is certified NBA material. I can't believe you picked Pitt. I'll be honest. I think Baylor's the clear favorite here. I mean, Florida, I think, could be decent, but I don't think there's any team that touches Baylor in this tournament. I got a sidetrack here. You really don't like Baylor?
Yeah, I mean, look, Walter's been great, but what if he struggles? Ray J. Dennis hasn't looked great.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually been watching, if you're looking at stats, then he looks fine, but he didn't look great at all against Auburn, and I think he had a pretty rough game against whoever they played on Sunday. I'm totally blanking out. Jaden Nunn's been fine, nothing special. Eve Misi's been good, but he's not a scorer. He's a good defender. So where does the scoring come from if Walter's struggling? And I think that if that happens in one of these games against Florida or Pitt, I think then Bub Carrington's been terrific. The Diaz twins, we saw how good they were at the end of the season. I think they can really take advantage and win that game and pull off the upset. And hey, we've seen crazier things in these tournaments, so you can never count a team like Pitt out.
We have. I mean, sometimes we're making these picks. It's honestly just like March Madness when it gets down to it. You think you know who's going to win, and the teams that end up winning these tournaments, you got to pay attention to. What is it, 10 of the last 11, some type of number like that, where if you win one of these early season tournaments, that's one of the teams that goes on to win it all. So it does matter. The ESPN Events Invitational, Penn State, Texas A&M, FAU, Butler, Iowa State, VCU, Boise State, Virginia Tech. One of my favorite tournaments because it's not top heavy, but you've got a lot of teams in here that you're kind of trying to figure out what they're made of. I love these type of tournaments, and this one, some teams here that could make noise, but who do you think is going to be the one that cuts down the nets?
Yeah, I agree with you. Really evenly matched up teams. I'm going to put Iowa State in the final. I don't know if they're going to win, but it feels like they just always overperform in these tournaments. Taman Lipsey's awesome. And yeah, I think they'll make the final for sure. And I think they'll go against either A&M or FAU. I'll go A&M. I don't think anyone can stop Wade Taylor, and I think they're going to win it all. I think the semifinals and the finals will be great games. I don't see either of them being more than 5-point victories for the teams, but yeah, I think A&M's got this one.
Well, I picked one of these games for my upset pick in CBB Review Studio, our episode on Sunday. That was Butler over FAU.
Wow.
And
you're really not high on FAU then?
And why not just ride it? I wasn't high on Butler to begin the season, and I know they've played a lot of mid-major teams, but they've just been blowing them out. Posh Alexander is one of the best defensive guards in the country. Can he stop Wade Taylor? Maybe. I think that Butler wins this tournament. I'm pulling off the upset there. I think Texas A&M and FAU are obviously the top-heavy teams, and like you mentioned, Iowa State, a team that a lot of people aren't giving a lot of respect to, and they certainly could be in that mix as well if you want to pick three teams. But I'm going Butler. I think that they do it.
And going with Pitt, honestly.
You think that's crazier?
Yeah, I just think with the 8 teams, I think there's better teams in this tournament than in the NIT tournament. But I would be curious to see what the odds are on the sports books. Who's the higher underdog between Butler and Pitt in those tournaments?
And Butler kind of got screwed a little bit. I don't know how they do these brackets. I don't know if they try to seed them like 1, 8, 2, 7. But the fact that Butler is playing FAU, like I think most people would probably say that. I mean, maybe they wouldn't because they were really bad in the Big East last year. But like, wouldn't you think that Butler should be seeded better than like a Boise State or a VCU? Because they kind of, I mean, Boise State does still have Max Rice, but VCU really, I mean, they lose Mike Rhodes as their coach. I mean, like, what do they have? And they're playing Iowa State, and you wouldn't say Iowa State's the 1 seed in this tournament. So it just kind of seems like weird matchups.
Okay, I have the odds. So NIT, we have Baylor minus 165. They're the favorite. Makes sense. Then we have Florida plus 285. Then Pittsburgh at plus 500. So Pittsburgh plus 500. In the ESPN Invitational, Texas A&M's the favorite plus 235. Then FAU right behind 260. Iowa State plus 300. You go down to number 7. It's Butler plus 2,000. So Matt, if you think they're going to win, then you might as well put a little bit of money on them because Vegas certainly does not.
Wow, that's surprising. I mean, hey, I'm sticking to it. I'm going with the Bulldogs. Call me crazy. You both picked a couple of weird teams.
Yeah.
One more to go. It's the Rady Children's Invitational. I think I got that right. I think, is this a new one? Has this been a tournament before?
That's a good question. We should know this answer, but I don't have a good answer for that, honestly.
I'll look it up because I do feel like the people need an answer, and I don't know if I've recognized this tournament before.
Yeah, we'll have some good teams in there. We got Iowa, Oklahoma, Seton Hall, and USC. All teams that kind of in the middle of the pack right now. USC looked like the best, but they lost to UC Irvine this week. A little bit of a surprising loss. They were down 2 players, 2 starters, but Iowa's good. Oklahoma's good, and then you can talk a little bit more about Seton Hall.
Yeah, 100%. Did you have a pick?
Yeah. I think I'm going to go Iowa. Iowa's offense looks awesome. And I think that if they're on a neutral court against Creighton or at home, I think they could win. They could win that game. And Creighton's one of the best teams in the country. So we don't know how healthy USC will be. Boogie Ellis without him. They're a whole different team. Seton Hall, I think, is the worst team in this tournament. No offense, Matt. And then Oklahoma's good, not great. They've looked good so far this season, but they haven't really played anyone. I think Iowa's going to win this one.
Okay, I think Oklahoma's the worst team in the tournament. No offense, Ariel. I think Seton Hall is the second worst team in this tournament.
That's fine.
I don't think Iowa's good either. And again, USC after losing to UC Irvine, and if they don't have Boogie Ellis, that could be a concern. But this is in San Diego. USC, the clear home favorite. So I will go with USC. I think that the winner of the Seton Hall USC game wins this tournament because if USC gets past Seton Hall, they'd be at home for like a championship matchup the day after Thanksgiving. You got to feel that they have a home crowd behind them. If Seton Hall were to win that game, I feel like it's like they just knocked off USC. They're probably going to be Iowa or Oklahoma. Again, Iowa's offense did look pretty good, so they'd be a little bit tougher of a matchup. But I'll go with the Trojans in the end. There are picks. Again, let us know yours if you're watching. Feel free to comment them as always, and you know we'll respond. We'll let you know what we think. But we do want to go into a fun little game here. We're gonna play a game where we each have 3 lives and we each have to name 10 of something. So you'll play first. You'll be the first player. The last 10 Wooden Award winners. You don't have to say them in order. I've got my list right here. I know all 10. I'm not just doing this off the dome, but you're going to try to do it in your head without knowing them. And you got 3 left. So if you have a bad guess, that's fine. But once you have 3, that cuts it. And let's have a little fun with this. I don't even know how to have a little fun with this, but let's just say like 7 is passing. Like you got to get to at least 7, man. If you don't get to 7, I'll have to demote you from a senior contributor.
That's fair enough. All right, let's start with. I'm going to start kind of go from last year all the way to 10 years ago and see if I can do that.
Okay.
So we have, of course, Zach Edey last year.
Yep.
We have Shibwe the year before that. Luka Garza.
Mm-hmm.
Obi Toppin.
Yep.
And then we had Zion.
We did. You're 5 for 5.
Frank Mason.
Wow. And you should know that. So that's good.
I should know that. Buddy Hield? Was he before that?
You did have Buddy Hield. You're 7 for 7 just like that. Hasn't even taken you that long.
Boom. I can keep my job now. But I still need to get 10. Was Doug McDermott the last 10 years?
You got one there. You got 2 more to go, buddy, and you got 3 live still.
All right, let's think. Anthony Davis was 2012, so that's 11 years ago. Has Duke had anyone? All right, so 2015, 2014, 2013. I don't think UNC has had a player win it.
You've got 2 to go.
Man.
And I will tell you this, Ariel, you haven't gone completely in order, so you kind of got to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah. All right.
You did pretty good, though. Pretty good.
Let's think. It's hard, man. I feel like I felt so confident coming out of this. I got 8 in a row, and now I'm just like I hit a wall almost. Trying to go by conference. I don't think Pac-12's had any winners. I don't think the Big 12's had any winners. Blake Griffin was a while ago. I don't think he falls in there.
Yeah, he's been in the NBA for like 20 years.
Yeah. Can I get a hint? Like a conference? Or is that alive? We count this alive.
We'll count that as alive.
Yeah.
You have 1 life gone, and I'm going to give you the Big Ten.
The Big Ten, okay. So no Purdue players. Michigan State. Cassius Winston never won it. Illinois. Not Kofi, not Ayo. Ohio State didn't have anyone. Oh, man, this is hard.
I got to put a time limit up soon.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Mo Wagner never won. And that was too long ago. Nick Stauskas?
That's a life.
Did he win one?
No.
Wow, I thought he did. Okay.
You have 1 life remaining.
1 life, jeez. Oh man.
If you want, I can give you. I'll be very nice here. Without giving you a life, I will give you the conference of the other player. You still got a Big Ten guy that you haven't named. There's also a Big East guy.
Okay, thank you. All right. It's Kemba. Kemba didn't win one. Marquette didn't have anyone.
And I'll be honest, one of these guys you probably should know. The other one, I could see why you wouldn't get him.
I think I should know both. It's just I'm losing it. Oh man. I'll go Kemba. I don't think it's right, but I'll go.
Yeah, and it's not Kemba. And you know what? You had to get the guess in there. The Big Ten guy was Frank Kaminsky.
Of course, I knew it. Oh.
And well, you didn't know it because you didn't say it.
I didn't know it, but I was thinking like there was the one guy I kept missing.
And the Big East guy was Jalen Brunson.
Of course.
A little surprising there.
That
was the one I figured maybe you wouldn't get it because I wouldn't say that Brunson took over college basketball that year.
Kansas got crushed so much by Brunson and Villanova in the Final Four that I kind of tried to erase that year altogether, at least after they made the Final Four. So
Yeah.
I'll put my hand up on that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's my turn now.
All right. For you, I'll keep that top 10. I think you can do the top 10 champions, the last 10, sorry, champions pretty easily. But how about the last 10 runner-ups?
Yep, last 10 runner-up. Sorry, I had that Rady Children's Invitational on that whole game. Still is the lower third there.
Okay.
I had to pop that off.
I have this before this, so obviously there's been a few teams who have been runner-ups twice in the last 10 years. So do you want to do the last 10 runner-ups or all the runner-ups in the last 10 years?
Let's do all the runner-ups in the last 10 years.
Okay.
But if they do it twice, I have to say it twice, right?
No, you don't have to. Also, you have to keep in mind there's no tournament in 2020, so it's from 2023 to 2012 or 2012.
Okay. I will start with the obvious last year, San Diego State.
Correct.
Gonzaga with the loss to Baylor, and North Carolina with the loss to Kansas. So let's get those three out of the way first. 2020, there was no tournament. 2019 was Virginia's win over. Gosh, I got to come back to that. Runner-ups are tougher. I think I know, but I don't want to waste a life if I don't know. Let me go to 2016 real quick, because that was a classic game that Villanova won and North Carolina lost.
You got both North Carolinas.
And I got both North Carolinas. And let me also go to 2013, because that was a classic game that Louisville won and Michigan lost.
That's
so
correct.
I got that one. 2014, we can go to Kentucky losing to UConn.
Correct.
And you said 2012 was all the way back?
No, I got it wrong. Well, yeah, no, that's 10 years. Louisville's the 10th year, so you don't have to get 2012.
Even with COVID?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Unless you don't want to count Louisville's championship, because I know that's a big topic.
I mean, I could go back to 2012 anyways, because actually, I don't know if I could go to 2012, so let's not do that.
Okay.
Let's not do that. I almost got myself in trouble there. Can I go back to? I'll go back to the. How many? I still have all three lives. Texas Tech.
Correct.
There we go. I still find it hard to believe that they made a championship. It's kind of hard to believe that.
Chris Beard.
Yeah, with the state of where the program is now. And I know I skipped out on a few, so this is actually very challenging now. Because I think I skipped on 2017 and 2019. But I got
Virginia.
Oh, yeah. I skipped on 2018. Who won the year before Virginia? Shoot. I should know this. I think Duke won. Did Duke win? No, Villanova won. Or did North Carolina win that year? North Carolina won one of those years.
They did win one of those years. I won't say which one.
Oh, gosh. This is impossible. I got to go conference by conference, too. Who lost a championship in that time period? Who was in the championship? What team made it all the way there? Wisconsin's one of those teams.
Wisconsin is one of those teams.
Knew that. How many do I got left?
You have 1, 2. You have 2 left. Because there's a couple repeats in here. So, yeah.
Kentucky.
Kentucky's one of them. 2014.
Yep. I'm looking at the Wooden Award next to my cheat sheet here to look in. I'm like, did any of these players play and lose? So I guess I got to guess Oklahoma.
That is incorrect. Oklahoma made a Final Four, but they never made a national championship in the last 10 years.
Okay. Oh, gosh. This is incredibly difficult. I really feel like I'm going to get this wrong too. Why do I feel like a mid-major team made a run and made it all the way to the championship? And I know that Butler's out of it because that Butler did it before, so I can't.
We're on the right track when you were talking about 2018 and Villanova. It's just who did they lose to, or who lost to them?
Yeah, who lost to them? Who lost to Villanova? And I feel like this was one of those years where, and I know who made a run too because I'm kind of going off of what were the years that Cuse played, and I was really into March Madness, and Cuse went to the Sweet 16 that year. But I don't think that Villanova played Duke because that would have been an awesome game to watch. I think it wasn't as fun of a game. Who did Villanova beat? Was it Houston?
It's not Houston. The championship was in Texas, though.
The championship was in Texas?
At the Alamo Dome in San Antonio.
And this is my last life.
Last life.
So I need to get this right. And is this the last team too?
It's kind of a repeat of another one, but yes, it's the last team.
Okay, so it was a team that lost in 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So you might have met them already, but I don't remember if you did, so I'm not going to count
it. Oh gosh, this isn't fun. I'm going conference by conference, so I don't totally get myself out of this. I want to be fair to myself.
Do you want a hint?
I'll take a hint.
All right, conference is Big Ten.
Oh gosh,
we're both having some Big Ten troubles today.
And I already mentioned Wisconsin, and I already got that right.
Yep.
Michigan State didn't go to the championship. I know that for a fact. I don't think they did. Did they? Now I'm like,
is that your final answer?
That's not my final answer, no. Okay, it's not Illinois. It isn't Rutgers, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's not Rutgers.
Gosh. I know I got to be fair here. I can't be taking up all the time. Not that there is a time limit. Like, we're just recording, and people are probably tuning out by now because they're like, Matt, this is just terrible cinema. This isn't good TV. I'm blanking on the Big Ten teams, and it's not Ohio State, so I'll go with Michigan State.
Close. The answer is Michigan. The Michigan Wolverines, led by Mo Wagner. They lost in 2018. They also lost in 2013 to Louisville.
I did say the 2013 one.
Yeah, I think you did. But when you start to not get the 2018 one, I didn't think it was fair to give you both. So
that's fair. You got to play by the rules. That was good.
Yeah, but I think good performances from both of us. Obviously not great. We probably should have gone both, but passing grades from both.
I mean, you ran them off in like 5 seconds on those first 7. I did pretty good. I think I got 5 of them within a minute, and then it got kind of tough after that.
Yeah. It's pretty late at night. We'll use that excuse. It's the middle of the week. Whatever excuse we can come up with, we're going to use it.
Yeah, we got to. But either way, we both passed. We both got the 7 that we needed. So you are still a senior contributor. I am still the leader of this this page. 50 minutes. We're almost at the end of Matt's Madness. I can't wait for these tournaments. Again, getting started today on Thursday, and hopefully you guys enjoy Feast Week. I guess it's not truly Feast Week yet until it's the Thanksgiving week, but it's getting there, and we've got some good tournaments for us this week. Again, for Ariel Puterman, I'm Matt Mlodzinski, and let us know some debates you want to hear on Matt's Madness in the coming episodes. But for now,